Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this presentation regarding the role that automated appraisal could have within our council, as well as outline the purpose of the appraisal process and the benefits and risks associated with its automation. I hope that I am able to shed light on this often contentious and misunderstood topic of discussion. It is essential for records to go through an appraisal process before entering into an archive in order to determine the record's relation to the database and its other occupants, if space is needed to be made to fit it, and where that space will come from. Jackie Beddington describes appraisal as an analytical process that archivists use to determine which records need to be created and captured into a record system, and how long the record needs to be kept. This definition outlines not only the importance of appraising a record for its integration, but also understanding its life cycle. The appraisal process is essential in preventing storage issues within the archive. Due to the nature of both physical and digital archives, there is a limited amount of space available to hold each record. The appraisal process ensures that each record within the archive has a specific purpose and place on the shelf, and when this purpose no longer serves, the disposal process can begin. Tools like record retention authorities are incredibly pertinent to the work that we do in regards specifically to disposal. While authorities by no means are able to force the destruction of a record, they are able to approve and permit the disposal. This assists an archivist in their appraisal process as they are able to investigate that record more closely and uncover the purpose of the approval or the reason for the destruction. While record retention authorities are unable to enforce the disposal, they are able to prevent it. In the case of legal necessity or parliamentary purposes, they can restrict an archivist from destroying a record while it is in use. Record retention authorities, such as the General Retention and Disposal Authority, are an integral part of the appraisal and specifically the disposal process for archivists, and having an understanding of the links between appraisal and these tools is essential. Automated appraisal is the purpose for our gathering today, as it is particularly contentious point of discussion within the archivist community. There are a number of benefits related to automating the appraisal process, for example, the ability for faster and more precise appraisals, leading to greater productivity in general, not only for appraisal, but the entire circulatory process of the records. Not only this, but through the use of metadata or even artificial intelligence, there is a greater ability to confirm authenticity as well as identify the records and their purpose within the archive. With these benefits, however, there are a number of risks and disadvantages associated with introducing an automation process into the appraisal model. Firstly, while the productivity is increased with an automation, there is quite a large jumping off point in the works that it will take to get these systems up and running, increasing the workload for at least a few months in the initial integration for not only the coding of metadata, but also troubleshooting, as it will take time to ensure the system is properly and correctly implemented. Secondly, the metadata will need to be constantly updated and re-standardized with each appraisal and disposal, as the needs of the archive may shift, and the records will need to be moderated accordingly. This leads to another increase in workload. Finally, with the increase of artificial intelligence being implemented into workplaces, especially careers of data implementation, having an automated system can lead to job instability due to systems no longer requiring a human touch. These risks are quite dramatic and need to be properly accounted for in the implementation of automation procedures. Description is an essential part of the appraisal process, in which not only the content but the context of a record is identified. Automating this process has a number of benefits, most notably the increased speed and credibility of the description. As the description process is based on the context of the record, including origin, authenticity, and reliability, it is one of the most consuming duties for an archivist. Automating this process will allow archivists to focus on other duties in their scope. Another benefit is the way in which this automation is able to gather evidence and resources related to the material on a wider scale than an archivist is able, not only increasing the speed of the description but also the credibility. With wider scopes in regards to the automation processes, however, there are risks that can jeopardize the reliability of a record. As is the case with automation tools such as Google Gemini, which pulls from wide sources to provide responses to Google searches, there is an issue with authenticity as it pulls from unreliable sources like Reddit and The Onion. This could prove a similar issue with the integration of automation based on artificial intelligence, which is looking to be a possible future in the profession of archivists. While this is something that can be solved, it remains a problematic aspect of the automated description process. Another risk, similar to that of automating the appraisal process, is job insecurity for the same reasons. The disadvantages of the description process are less intrinsic than that of the appraisal process, and therefore it is a better option to automate this process than the appraisal system entirely. There are a number of legal frameworks that have an effect on the initiative of the City of Riversea. The State Record Act affects the automation of appraisal as it relates to the public accessibility of records, and in the automated appraisal process, it could restrict visibility for the public. Local Government Act relates specifically to the local governments such as the City of Riversea and the provisions granted to the council. The Government's Sector Finances Act is explicitly related to funds provided to local governments for purposes such as the automation of the appraisal process within the council archives in our case. The Freedom of Information Act expands on the State Record Act, as it refers to the public's capacity to request access to records and information. The Privacy Act can be affected both by the automation and also the freedom of information, especially in the case of providing the information to the public, and in the case of the metadata understanding which information is private versus public. It is important to understand the legislation in place to evaluate the ways in which it can not only assist the archives, but the public's relationship to it. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this presentation, and I hope that you have a deeper understanding of the effects that automating appraisal will have on this organization. The discussion is an essential step for securing the future not only of our archive, but for the information profession as a whole.